What's up, guys? So in this video I want to go over what I usually do on a rainy day, because today is a rainy day and I don't feel like going outside to throw. If you have a place inside where you can throw, then maybe this is just something you want to do on a day when you don't feel like throwing. But I have to throw outside, so some things that you'll need to get started. I would get a turntable, and this is just to help move around the bowls and everything easier, so you can work on a piece or you can move it at the same time and stuff like that. I just think it's easier to use with the turntable, especially when you start getting into burnishing it and applying terra-sig to it. You're going to want to have a turntable. You're also going to want to have some clay, which I'm just using some clay that I've already processed, and I've already put grog in it, and it's been tempered and everything. So I like, with my hand-built stuff, I like to use heavily tempered clay. That's just my preference. I feel like it makes the hand building the piece a lot stronger, and it's something that you can't really use on a table. Heavily grogged or heavily tempered clay, you can't really use that when you're throwing, just because it'll tear your hands up. So I usually like to use that with these hand building ones. Then you're going to need some forms to put the clay around. So you're always going to want to pack it on the inside, and we'll go more into detail about that. But yeah, you want to find some forms. I found these at Goodwill, 97 cents. I mean, these are nice, nice little pot plants that I think are nice little forms that I think would make good plant pots and stuff like that. So I'm just going to be working with these today. I've already made a few. I'll show you guys what it looks like, and I'll show you how I go about working with these. You're also going to want like some paper. I just use like newspaper or like advertisement type stuff that just comes in the mail that you're going to throw away. Just start saving it up, and you can use that to help you with your hand building. And I'll show you what I mean by that and how to use it properly, because before, when I used to use it, I still had to do a lot of work to it after getting it out of the pot. So I'll show you how I go about doing this process. So first things first, pick the form that you want to use. I'm going to use this guy, and just make sure it's clean on the inside. I still have a little bit of dried up clay on the inside. The first time I ever used a form to create a hand build with, I ended up packing it straight into the bowl. And you don't want to pack it straight into the bowl. You want to have something on the inside so that you can easily get the clay out. What I mean by that is, like, you want something like this piece of paper, and you want to, let's see, looking for my knife and I can't find it. Oh, there it is. Alright, so you don't want to get too much paper to where it's a hassle to like bend the edges and fold the edges and stuff. I think that's pretty key. So I'm going to cut this in half first, and I've realized if I take a little bit of extra time, it can save me a lot more time down the road. So after After I cut this to where I think it might be a good enough size for it, I'm gonna also want to cut it again. And what I'm looking for is almost to cut 4 sides of it, of this piece of paper. I want to cut 4 sides of it, but I want to keep the middle untouched. So what I mean by this is I want to cut a piece on this side. I want to cut a piece on this side right to the base of the bowl and turn it and try and get it evenly spaced from one side to another. Then I'm going to try and cut it again on this side and on this side. And that will help with the paper folding in when you go to push it in. So when I go to push this in now, see how it easily folds into itself? And before, when I used to do this, I never cut it, and by not cutting it, I allowed a lot more creases to form. And when you're packing in clay with a lot of creases and you go to take it out and you take off the paper, well, all those creases are pushed into your form that you just created, and now it's not nice and smooth. You have a lot of deep lines and creases in there that you either have to fill up, or you just have to, maybe it's something that you like, maybe it's an aesthetic that you like, I don't know, but I don't really like it. I like to burnish my stuff, and I like to put TerraSig on it and see more of the firing at the end, what kind of marks I get at the end, instead of more of the textured deep cuts and stuff. So I like to cut this. It just makes it. Alright, so after you get the paper in there, I like to start right at the base, in the middle point, and I try and get the thickness to about maybe ½ an inch. I want to make maybe ½ an inch on the base. And it really depends on your clay body too, but sometimes I end up thinking I have a lot thicker walls than I really do, and when I go to take it out and burnish it, I end up cracking the walls because either one, it's still too soft, or two, it's not thick enough. You know, it's not sturdy enough yet. So I usually like to do like ½ an inch. And I'll start with the middle, and I don't know, maybe you guys are more experts on, you know, more knowledgeable on how to hand build with this, but usually I like to start in the middle, and I'll push down in the middle first and start trying to build up the middle. And really I keep adding more stuff to the top and then pushing out. That way you know there's no air bubbles. So I'll start on top of what I previously put down and then kind of smear it out to the sides. And when I smear it out to the sides, I feel like it helps with like air bubbles and stuff like that. So I'll put it on top and I'll just push and smear it out to the side to try and build it up that way. That's with the base. And really that's kind of what you want to do with the sides as well. I mean, you want to start kind of at the base and work your way up, push out, make sure you're pushing it all out and up and kind of spreading from the center. And so you're really just going to keep building upon this. And so you can already see where some creases might start to form when you're pushing it in. And I feel like, you know, the more cuts you make in your piece of paper, the better off you'll be without having all these creases. Which I should probably experiment more with and see how many cuts would probably be best for like a square sheet of paper. But yeah, just keep working it. Don't really start, like, don't really try and put it in like a puzzle piece and then try and melt it in. I would put it on top, make sure it's nice and set on top of that other piece of clay, and then you're just pushing it in. I feel like that helps and saves me a lot of time too, instead of trying to put it in like puzzle pieces. Alright, so once you've packed it, you've pushed it in, you think all the sides are around an even thickness, and you've smoothed it out, then I would cut this top edge up here. And you don't have to do this. I mean, you could do whatever you want with the edges, but I try and get the edge to pop up just a little bit over the rim. That way I can cut it off and give it one nice smooth top to the rim. Kind of how I like mine. But you know, you could compact yours in if you wanted to, and I do compact this a little bit just to make sure the edge is good before I cut into it. And see, like this, I feel like that needs to be compacted more, so you can take stuff from the other ones here. And you'll get a feel for this the more that you do it, but I might not actually need to cut this one. It might be enough here. Disperse it very quickly. So this is why I like using these pots for bonsais, succulents, snake plants, stuff like that. You can water it, fill it all the way up, and within 2 to 3 days it'll be completely dry again, which is great for the roots for succulents and snake plants and stuff like that. And it helps it, I mean, it keeps me from having to like put it over a sink and drain it and all this other stuff with it. So all I'm doing right now is just cutting this edge off, trying to make a nice even edge. So yeah, after you get done cutting the rim, packing it, you like the way it looks, you're going to set it aside for about a day, come back to it, and you're going to peel off this paper. So I'll come back to you in about a day and I'll show you the process. Alright guys, it's been about 24 hours. I've let it kind of dry up a little bit, which just makes it a lot easier to get this out without having to damage this pot. So about 24 hours, let it dry out. The paper will start to get dry, the clay will get a little bit drier, and then you just flip it over It should come out just like that. And if you didn't cut your paper, you're going to see a bunch of these crease lines like that, but even a lot more than that. That's why I like to cut the paper now. Gives you a lot less creases. So these cracks I'm probably going to have to fill up with some more clay. And then I'm just going to try and burnish around the sides of this to get these lines out, these divots out. But I'm going to fill up as much as I can before I burnish. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Since this is still kind of wet, the clay is still kind of wet, you can add clay that you used yesterday and just push it into these cracks. It's about this is about soft leather right now, so you can still work with it pretty easily, but it's also durable enough to where you can push down into it without messing up the form. So just try and fill up those cracks, and once you're done with that, find a stone, or you can use a spoon or even your fingernail, and you're just going to polish the clay or burnish the clay. And when you burnish, you're just putting enough pressure to get these lines gone. There's not much to fill up. You can just slightly polish over it. Fingernail, stone, spoon, whatever. And it's helping push in, if you have a really tempered clay body, it's going to help push in all that grit and give you a nice smooth surface. And the last thing I like to do before I let it dry out some more is I like to put in my maker's mark while it's still around soft leather. So if you've made one of these, I would put it in around this stage. If you haven't, leave a comment and I can make a video if that's something you guys want to see. But I'll usually just find the thickest area or the safest place I think I can stamp down on it. And at soft leather stage, you don't have to push very hard, which is great because I don't want to do this over. Then I got it on there. Alright guys, so pulled off the paper. I packed in these areas, and I've already stamped it, and I've already burnished it a little bit. And remember, this is to make one of these pots. It's just a process. You don't want to rush too quickly with this. So if it was warmer, right now it's, you know, middle of January. It's pretty cold here, so it's going to take a little bit longer to dry. You may be able to increase these steps depending on how warm it gets, how warm it is where you're at, or it might take a little bit longer of a time period in between each step to do this. So this is after I've packed it, I've marked it, did the rim, I've taken off everything, and this is probably going to be your last step before firing. So the only thing I want to do now is just burn it. Well, you're going to burnish this and then probably wait another day, and then we're going to put some TerraSig on it and polish that and then fire it. So whenever I'm burnishing it, what I'm doing right now is I'm taking this stone and I'm using this flat long edge that I have here that's protruding out compared to the rest of the stone. I'm trying to get that edge onto my pot because that's a nice big long surface, and you can see here where it gives it more of a sheen, and all you're doing is just compacting the clay deeper and deeper into itself. You're just making the clay body tighter and tighter. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to burnish this until everything looks nice and shiny. And not only will this give a nice sheen to your pot, but it also helps strengthen it. Burnishing also helps strengthen it. So and make sure you're not pushing too much. You don't want to push too hard. I like to burnish during leather hard to a little bit above leather hard before it gets to bone dry. I'll even burnish at bone dry sometimes, but you really need to know the strength of the clay body to work it properly. So this would probably be the easiest. Once you notice that your pot is starting to look a little ashy, it almost looks like a little ashy, and that's just the clay particles on the top of your pot is just really dry, so it almost looks dusty or ashy there. And you're just going to take that dusty ashiness and you're going to push it back into the pot, and that gives it that burnished look and effect. And this might dry up the next day and it might look ashy again, and if it looks ashy, just compact it again. Keep burnishing it. It's a process, but I feel like it's a lot easier to do it this way than to wait for it to get bone dry and do it all then. I don't really like to wait until it gets bone dry to burnish my pots. It's a lot easier for me and a lot quicker if I do it during its different drying stages. So I've already did this once, and that just helps. The first time I did it, it just helped to make this the surface a little bit smoother and pushed in like a lot of the gritty stuff, because this is a highly tempered piece of pottery, so it has a lot of grit and sand in it, and that's just how it is with the clay that I have because of where I get it from and how I temper it. But it may be different for you guys if you're using like store-bought clay, or just if you're making clay from your area, it might be softer. But yeah, so you're just going to burnish this, and then you're going to let it sit and dry for a longer period of time again, and then probably have to burnish it one more time and then put some TerraSig on it, and it'll be nice and shiny for you. So I'll just go ahead and fast forward through this so you don't have to see all. Alright guys, so it's been about 2 days now that I've let it sit and dry, and the last thing I have to do is apply some TerraSig, and I'm just going to burnish it. I have a video on how to make TerraSig in like with 3 ingredients or something like that. It's pretty simple. pretty simple to understand. And putting on Terra Sig just helps with getting a higher quality burnish. Makes it a lot shinier, gives it a better sheen, and it makes it to where the marks that you have or that you want to put on to your pot, like if you wanted to do horsehair, raku, or if you wanted to do like sagger, some sort of sagger firing, the color and the markings will show up a lot better if you put Terra Sig on it. So I'm going to put some Terra Sig on it and let it dry out, and then the last phase is just going to be firing it. Alright guys, so this is what the finished product is going to look like before you put it into the kiln. Should look nice and shiny. Try and get it as much of the grit compacted into the surface as you can. Make sure there's no sharp edges. Really just make sure everything's compact, burnished well. If you want, you know, the marks that you make on here, if you want them to stand out, make sure it's burnished well and you have some sort of Terra Sig on it. And that's pretty much it until firing.